Right. I am an atheist, as mentioned before. I'm not agnostic about my atheism, so I am not the one who says that we do not or cannot know whether God exists or not. I would say that I am Gnostic, sure, in my atheism. So I certainly reject the belief in God, and I am convinced that God does not exist.
Assalamu alaikum. Full Metal here. Ridwan claims to be a Gnostic Atheist, which means that he knows there is no God. The problem with such an assertion is that in classical theism and pretty much of the religions on the planet, the conception of God has the common denominator of being seen as transcending empirical reality. So what Ridwan has here really is an epistemological problem. Epistemology is that branch of philosophy which deals on how do we know things. And the problem Ridwan is facing with this kind of assertion is, I know that a reality which I cannot empirically verify does not exist. Now, Ridwan here cannot cop out by saying that I lack belief in God, which is usually the mainstream position of atheists. They would tell you, I'm not convinced with the reasons that you are presenting me to believe in God, therefore I don't believe in God. But this position is one of agnosticism at the same time because they don't really know. And they admit that quite usually. The thing is that Ridwan here is saying that he knows there is no God. So to rephrase his statement, he's saying, I know that a reality which I can have possibly no knowledge about does not exist. It's kind of a contradiction. I know that something I cannot possibly verify does not exist. And this is why he fails right at the beginning. In this video, we will see some of his reasons for being an atheist, inshallah. Stay tuned.
I don't believe in God. I think one of the most problematic things for me when I was a Muslim was to look at a map of the distribution of religious groups and to think a little bit further about that. In fact, I'll do it right here. There are many maps which show the distribution of religious groups. Here is one of them. Some of these maps may divide Christian beliefs into separate religions, and some do the same with Islam. But I think it's totally sufficient to simply look at a map that colors the map by the major religions. When I look at this map, I see something that I could never unsee when I was a Muslim.
Wow.
And as someone who really loves maps, it always disturbed me when I came across a map of religions. What I see is that the religion that you believe in depends very much on the circumstances that you are brought into when you are born. If you are born in the middle of America, you are very likely to be born into Christianity. If you are born in Italy, you are even more likely to be a Christian. In Poland, even more. If you are born in Saudi Arabia, you are almost definitely a Muslim. If you are born in Pakistan or Egypt, you are again most likely a Muslim. And this only scratches the surface. I was born in Germany, which is predominantly Christian, although Germans don't really care that much about religion anymore. But since I was born into a Turkish Muslim immigrant family in Germany, I was born into Islam and was raised as a Muslim. Most people who, like in my case, are born into such Muslim families would live their lives as Muslims and die as Muslims. Most of them would never change their beliefs. I was just an exception. I had different interests, a different personality, maybe a combination of things that happened in my life, and I chose to abandon my beliefs and to change them. But most people don't do that. In modern times, religious interactions may have become much more common, but still, most people stay within the religions that they are born into. Only few people abandon their religion, and only a very tiny number of people, maybe a statistically insignificant number of people, convert to a different religion permanently. And this intrusive idea that I always got when I looked at this map is, how could I possibly believe that my religion is the true one, the right one, the good one, when the conviction that my religion is the right one only depends on where I am born and in what time.
I cannot help but notice that what Ridwan is describing is a big issue and that compromised his faith when he was still a Muslim is in reality but a very poor argument that is not taken seriously by theologians or philosophers alike. The Catholic writer Trent Horn describes this more as a bad attitude than a proper argument. And this further prompts me to believe that Ridwan is not really philosophically prepared, to be having this kind of talks. Let's see why it's a bad argument. So Ridwan is claiming that you cannot believe your religion to be the right one because such belief only depends on where you are born. Now, the first logical issue I have with this statement is that he's conjuring up this only. only depends on where you are born. I mean, the logical fallacy he's committing is simply ascribing motives to people's convictions behind their beliefs that he has really no means to verify. Well, unless he asks them, of course. And I'm pretty sure that if he was to ask any believer from any different religion, even if they're born and raised into it, I'm pretty sure they would come up with reasons that are not just, well, because I was born into it. That's really not charitable. And starting with a quick logical analysis of the inference itself, there is really nothing stopping one from believing that his religion is the right one, actually. Despite being born and raised into it, people can believe whatever they want. How can I believe? Well, they can still believe that even if they're wrong. I'm just making an analysis of the inference here because, Ridvan, you gotta be careful about what kind of words you use. If you're doing philosophy, you need to do it well and be precise about what you say. Now, there's an addition to be made that for religion aside, for all of our political, scientific, and ethical beliefs, we would say that even if other people disagree with them and do not live in places that teach these beliefs as true, that doesn't mean that these beliefs are false. That alone does not establish these beliefs as false, nor these beliefs are false unless challenged. Lack of challenge to my beliefs does not establish that my belief is necessarily wrong. These are all a bunch of non sequiturs. In simple terms, the geographical dominance of a certain belief tells us nothing whether that belief is right or wrong.
Instead of leaving my religion, I could have gone into Muslim apologetics, and I could have made many arguments that are very convincing in favor of Islam. Arguments that I would have thought were very solid. Muslim arguments are very laughable to me right now, but to the average Muslim who wants to stay within Islam, Islam is quite convincing. And to them, their arguments are very solid, even if to me they look very ridiculous. Well, Christians also make very solid arguments for their religion, or so they believe. Protestants make solid arguments. Orthodox Christians make solid arguments. Catholics make solid arguments for their beliefs. Sunni Muslims make solid arguments. Shia Muslims make very convincing arguments as they believe. Hindus make solid arguments. Jews make solid arguments. As long as you want to justify your beliefs, you will find solid arguments. All of them believe that their own convictions are definitely very reliable, very solid. And they believe in that just as much as I did when I was still a Muslim, and I believed in the defenses of...
Once again, not a very great display of critical thinking from Ridvan. The reason for that is that he seems to be making two very fallacious implications. The first one, he seems to be implying that just because there is a multiplicity of competing religious systems, then that should somehow tell us something about the truth value of our own religious system. And this is false. A multiplicity alone does not really tell us anything of the truth value of the single instances. So it's a non sequitur, it doesn't follow. The second implication he seems to be making is that just because there's other people from other competing religious systems and they're very convinced about those beliefs that are contrary to the ones that we are holding, then that should somehow as well tell us something about the truth value of our own religious system. And this is false as well. The state of conviction that someone has in certain beliefs contrary to the ones we hold does not really tell us anything about the truth value of the belief we are holding, nor about the belief they are very convinced into. There's many factors going on around, and the best you can do here is sit down and have a talk. This is why there's stuff like comparative religions, interfaith dialogues. And the same is to be said about this multiplicity of solid arguments he keeps ranting about. Just because people are very convinced about arguments coming from theologies that are contrary to our own, it doesn't mean that those arguments are solid. It doesn't mean that those arguments are valid. It doesn't mean that they're not valid. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily false. Just because there's a competing multiplicity of instances, that tells us nothing. And think about it. This argument is so much of a garbage, and Ridvan seems to be quite adamant in thinking that it's a solid argument. Does that make it a solid argument? Quite no. And I also have to say that, religion aside, people believe in all kind of different ideologies. There's so many kind of competing ideologies out there, from science to politics to ethics. I'm pretty sure that Ridvan is still holding some kind of beliefs. He's not an absolute skeptic just because there's a multiplicity of competing ideologies out there. I think he believes in democracy. Are we now to put the validity of democracy in question for the simple fact that there's other political ideologies out there? Not really. Not really. The existence of other competing ideologies doesn't really tell us anything about the truth value of the one we ascribe to. You need to put it in contrast, you need to put it under scrutiny, you need to have dialogue. This is how you do it.
How could I, in a world where I don't know anything, and I learn all my life, and I realize over and over again that I don't know anything, that I am ignorant, that we are ignorant, that humans have been ignorant for so long, that we still don't know some very basic things about the seas around and under us, about the space that is above us or around us? How could I be sure that in this ignorant world, in this flawed world where we constantly make so many decisions that turn out to be complete failures, how could I be sure that I have the right answer, and that I was, by coincidence, by a chance, by a blessing, born into the right one, the right answer? How could I possibly believe that? We still don't know how the brain really works. We're making progress. We've begun to figure it out quite recently, and we're making a lot of progress. But we still don't properly understand much of the brain, which is us, which is our motherboard. What we understand so far from it is that we humans make many judgments and have made many judgments in history that are incredibly wrong, but we always think that we are onto something. And we rather want to feel safe and comfortable about our beliefs instead of inquiring further and admitting that we may be mistaken, or that we may have been mistaken.
My goodness, this guy is in a desperate need of a course in logic. What he's ranting about here is just a big form of argument from ignorance, which is quite of a basic logical fallacy, this is basic mistakes. And it rests on the fact that our own state of knowledge, whether we're ignorant about something or not, does not normally bear on the truth or falsity of a specific statement. The fallacy consists of the intervention of irrelevant material. For example, the scientific arguments that he was bringing up, like, look how little we know about the brain, look how little we know about the oceans. So what? In the shape of our own ignorance, okay? Into an argument which is about something specific. If we are discussing the existence of God from a philosophical, theological perspective, and I'm offering a certain proposition, you telling me that we don't know much about the universe really bears nothing on the truth or falsity of the current statement at hand. It's such a basic mistake to make. Really, whatever.
Because why challenge and risk changing everything when we can just accept our assumptions and go with the flow without disturbing the system which works? Why bother looking for more answers when we can just live in comfort with whatever people believe in? Knowing this, how could I believe that my beliefs, which my culture adopted at some point, which I was gladly, happily born into, are the right beliefs, and all the others are wrong? Even if some of us go on greater journeys and experience different cultures and change our beliefs throughout our lives, we are very few. Most people simply spend their lives believing in whatever their parents believed in, even if they differ a bit in their precise practices and beliefs. They usually think that the beliefs that they were born into, which their parents held, are of course true. And there are so many convincing arguments, so many convincing reasons to believe in it. Of course it's true. I keep thinking about all those people, most people, the vast majority of people, who never question their beliefs, who never end up changing any of their beliefs, and it's okay. It's not their fault. As said, they are simply abiding by the circumstances which they were born into. Think about this. If you're a Christian watching this, think about being born into a religious Muslim family in a place in Pakistan, where more than 95% of people are Muslims. It may seem absurd and outlandish to you right now to believe in Islam, which is this absurd belief that is so obviously wrong and so obviously terrible. But that's only because you were not born there in those circumstances. It's because you are a Christian. If you were in that guy's position in Pakistan, in that place where 95% of people in your surrounding and your family are Muslims, then you would also most likely, almost certainly, be born as a Muslim, live your life as a Muslim, and die as a Muslim. And you would be offended by Muhammad cartoons, by the way. Most likely, there would be no way for you to ever come to the conclusions that you have right now as a Christian who was born in America, for example. There would be no way for you to ever convert to Christianity, no matter what kinds of scenarios people want to offer you right now to justify your belief.
Following up from before, if Ridwan really did keep asking questions instead of just stopping at this kind of silliness, maybe he would have found the answers, because this is really basic stuff. It's absurd. Now, it is true, I could have been born as a Hindu raised in India, and maybe being very convinced about Hinduism being the case. But does that bear any does that tell us anything about the truth value of Islam or of Hinduism? Not really. The way I would explain that is that from what I know now about Hinduism and Islam, I would say that if that hypothetical was the case, I would still be mistaken, and Islam is the truth regardless. Now, the thing is that these kind of hypotheticals, or the fact that other people which hold contrary beliefs to the ones that we are holding and are very convinced about them, the fact that these people exist just that fact, and the fact that they're very convinced about these contrary beliefs, that's really, really not telling us anything on the truth value of their own beliefs and our very same beliefs. This is why, again, there's stuff called comparative religions, there's stuff called let's sit down and have a talk about it. Ridvan seems just to be making an argument from laziness. Like, what's the point? What is the point of what you're saying?
We are very lucky in the 21st century. Let's go back 500 years. It was extremely uncommon compared to today to interact with other religions, to learn about different religions. Today, the least informed individual can use their smartphone, which we use more commonly to look at much less intelligent things, to learn the basics about most major religions in the world. In a week, you can learn much of the important stuff, or most of the important stuff, about all the major religions, and you can have a fairly good understanding about them. It may be a bit of a headache, but it's possible. So it's easy for us nowadays to sit here and say, yeah, I could have converted to that religion, but it's obviously wrong, so why would I do that? I'm totally convinced with my own. The average person 500 years ago didn't even have the luxury to think about any of this, and to question whether they should stay a Muslim or a Christian, or convert to a different religion. I think the point here is clear. We are born into different times and geographies, and the beliefs that we have depend on the time and the place that we are in. But the problem does not end by just saying religions depend on our circumstances, which is why all religions are wrong because they are random.
All religions are wrong because they're random. Wow, man. This is a new record. You really got it all in life.
That is not correct. Because according to the Encyclopedia of...
That's a damn lie.
Now, since valid reasoning abides by clear logical principles that do not care about Ridvan's blah blah, let's put his claim under scrutiny. The claim is, all religions are wrong because they are random. First of all, religions and ideologies are not random. The major ones are simply a well-established set of beliefs that happen to be predominant in certain geographical areas because of historical, cultural, and societal adherence. Not even the people being born in these places and that adhere to these religions are random. Randomness is fundamentally a way of saying we don't know what caused things, but since we generally do know how people are brought into being in a certain place, even that is not much random. Second of all, even if we were to concede these fallacious remarks on religions being random and that stuff, it still doesn't logically follow that they must be wrong because just that. If I'm playing cards with my friends and I pick a random one, it doesn't mean that that card is going to be necessarily bad or wrong just because it's a random one. And it doesn't follow that the whole set of cards is bad just because I can possibly pick a bad one. Thirdly, if you believe this nonsensical assertion, then you may as well be consistent and say that democracy and all political ideologies or naturalism and secular ideologies, which Ridvan very happily believes in, are all wrong because they are random and people don't really choose in which one to be born in. And that's what happens when you deploy garbage logic. You end up shooting yourself in the feet. Finally, regarding the example he brings of people of ancient times not really having external contact with people of other beliefs, well, that's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. If one never comes in contact with beliefs and data challenging his worldview, then why should he really doubt it to begin with? He, under such terms, is justified in believing in what he believes. He's maybe wrong, but as long as he's honest and has acceptable reasons to abide by his beliefs, then those are justified. The conclusions we take from this video, because we're at the ending, are the following. The place of birth of someone does not tell whether the ideology dominant in that area is true or not. The possibility for humans to be born in places that hold contrary beliefs to ours do not tell whether our or their ideology is true or not. The possibility that we could have been raised in different places and with different convictions does not render what we believe in now false nor true by default. The fact that there are people convinced about beliefs different than ours do not really tell us much about the truth value of our belief. No, the conviction of people do not only depend on where they are born. Just go outside and ask someone. I'm pretty sure that even if they're Christian or Hindu, they're gonna give you more of a reason than, well, I believe because I'm born here. I mean, I'm a Muslim because I believe that the conception of God in Islam makes sense after I believe that there is a God. That's it. It's not just because I was born there, and I was raised in a Catholic nation. But anyway, let's just close it here. Oh, by the way, the video is not over. The original video from Ridvan, this is just first of his reasons. And good Lord, good Lord, him calling this a big issue really goes to say on how much prepared he is philosophically to deal with this kind of stuff, okay? This really says a lot. I'm being honest, guys. I'm not speaking out of hate for him or something, or because I dislike him, but this is basic stuff. This is really basic stuff, you know. The biggest conclusion you take out of this video is that he told us nothing about the truth or falsity of our beliefs or of any religion on the planet. He said nothing. Just waste our time. And let me know in the comment section. Give me some feedback if you want to see me finishing his original video, like watching more of it. Like, I mean, it's not really a bother. You let me know. Thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum.